All right, yes, so, sorry about that. It is,
That's all right.
recording.
I'll start over and I'll try to be more succinct this time. So at least from a developer perspective, what I really see happening in acquisitions right now, the big thing that we are working on is kind of moving everything into the APIs. Tomas has been doing a lot of work with this while integrating with Gobi and allowing integration with other systems. So the reason we want to move to use the Koha APIs is that right now, when you go to acquisitions, and let's say you go to the acquisitions homepage, we start pulling in all of the order information, totaling everything up, getting the budget information, and kind of building these tables out of it. Similar things happen when you go to receive an order. We sort of go get all your open orders, get all the information, and then funnel it into the page. The nice thing with the API is it kind of uses a different workflow where instead of having to load everything at the start of the page, we go and we load the page, and then we can start getting the orders and processing them into the page so that you don't have to wait so long for everything to show up. You can sort of see it as it's coming in. And if you make any changes or filter, we don't have to reload the entire web page. We can just reload that one little kind of specific part of it. So those are the big things I have in my queue, and I'm working on acquisitions multi-receipt so that you can, when you're receiving, you can receive several items at once instead of having to receive one at a time. That is a tricky issue just because Koha is not built that way currently, and there's a lot of information that you need to put while receiving an order. But those are like big previews of what's coming. So what other questions do you have?
I think I can speak for most people that receiving multiple orders, I think multiple items on an order for people that aren't doing EDI, I think will be very popular. So yes, strongly agree. Does anybody have a question for Nick that they would? Okay, Barbara Johnson, does multiple order receiving have a bug number? And I think it does.
I believe so. Give me just a few minutes while I look for that one.
Okay.
Nick, could you maybe you could shout out a couple of what are the very popular bugs with other developers and acquisitions right now on top of this? Like, is there several of the API related ones that we could CC ourselves on and follow along as the developers are working?
So much like the bug number for multi-receipt, which is a very old bug number that we kind of inherited, until it's done, we don't actually put a lot there. So you may have to wait a little while to get that kind of update. But the other ones, there's bug 20212. Which is just called slowness in acquisitions, and that's kind of the large where a lot of these changes are happening. And I'm trying to see the other bug is pushed so it doesn't come up in my initial search. See if I can find that. 18731. I'll paste that in there. And then there'll be tangential bugs from all of those. And there has been, I know Kyle is still working on the EDI plugins and doing stuff. Martin at PTFS Europe, I don't believe he has any bug numbers yet, but they are working on improving kind of a lot of the core EDI code, which will just bring along with it more of those kind of acquisitions cleanup and changes and things that people want to see. And I don't know, is this strictly a US group or are we worldwide here?
We sent it out to worldwide. I don't know if there's anyone here.
We do have Holly from Interleaf,
okay,
who chimed in earlier, and a few other people joining us from Interleaf on occasion. It wouldn't hurt to remind the PTFS Europe folks that they can join us too. I know some of them work a little late.
Yeah. So then I will just add that the EDI is very different for the world and the US. Everywhere else, it's much more of a standard and can use that internal code. At least the US side of it, we all use Kyle's plugins because the EDI for each vendor is drastically different, to put it mildly.
Mhm. Yeah. I know, I'm just going to ask about a bug that we're interested in, and hopefully other people will, it'll stimulate some ideas too. There's a connection between acquisition, or it is acquisitions, and the purchase suggestions. When you do non-EDI ordering, there's a way to connect the purchase suggestion to the order, and then the patron can get notified, you know, during the process when the thing comes. But right now, if we place EDI orders, there isn't a connection. How is that? Is it? I know that there's a bug out there for that. How's that one coming along?
I don't have any specific updates on that one right now.
Okay.
Again, it is in the works, and it's sort of, there was a lot of waiting while Tomas worked on the endpoints, because we kind of want everything to use these endpoints. So that's really been the linchpin kind of this, to get his work in and then build on top of it, rather than sort of building on the existing systems and having to change things or end up facing the same problems that we already have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Nick, could you just give a real brief reminder about APIs and what they do in case anyone here is not familiar, or it's been a little while since that was discussed?
Sure. So the API essentially just gives a standard way for people to interact with the Koha database. It allows for outside systems to make, you know, standard requests to Koha and say, like, I want to get acquisitions information, I want to change acquisitions information, patron information. It's sort of the whole database. It's just a different way of interacting with the database so that you can directly make these requests and get objects and do things to them. It's a benefit for integrating with outside partners so that they can, you know, use these standard requests that they already have to do what they expect to do. And then internally to Koha, it's helpful, as I said before, because it lets us interact with the data without having to load everything into the web page. It lets us load it a little more dynamically, and make these requests a little bit simpler.
And there's a move to use APIs across modules in Koha, not just acquisitions, right?
Yes, we have been building the RESTful interface for some time, and it's really kind of picking up steam now. So most of the developments that you're going to see are going to come with these API enhancements as well right now. And if any of you are curious, you can actually go and see like what endpoints are built in your current system and everything like that. Let me just, I'll put a little link in there. Just replace that localhost 8080 UC if I can. I didn't copy the whole link. With your local catalog site. And you can go see what endpoints are available in your Koha and play with that. On the developer side, it just makes everything a little bit more fun because it's a much simpler, more contained and understandable way of interacting with everything.
I don't know if anybody else has questions. One bug that this group has sort of been, what should we, you know, negotiating, you know, pooling our thoughts on and getting different ideas and trying to create something that all of us can benefit from is, let's see, 13325. And that's the tracking function for the budget modules. And we kind of came up with some ideas, and I know that I'm guessing it was, you were part of the discussion too. We got some, basically came back with 3 phases, you know, that we could create it in 3 phases. And Okay, good. We've got some questions. And can you talk about a little bit about why that is turning out to be so complicated and expensive? Kind of surprised me. But
so I do remember talking about this one. I don't remember the details of what we proposed.
okay. I can
But I
help
do
you
remember
with
saying
that.
that it was going to be 3 phases. Yeah, if you want to send me that or the ticket number.
Yeah, let me find the ticket number here. Maybe.
So I think some of what you asked for is a little bit simpler, and then some of it is a little more complicated. Because it wasn't just tracking the changes to budgets, but also providing a view for the history of the budgets and building that kind of into the budget page. In general, too, when we get a proposal for a bug and we are trying to spec it out, a lot of what the conversation comes down to is, one, what are we going to need, not just to do the workflow that is listed in the bug, but to provide for the workflows that we expect the rest of the community to need. So we're trying to look beyond just the the specific use case that's asked for and how it might be used elsewhere, as well as kind of what's going to need to exist just to get it through that community process, and doing it in a way that generally we're writing code that is going to be reusable and extensible where we can. It's always better to abstract or to pull something out, make it work in a bigger fashion than focusing on one real specific thing, because that gets us into the trouble that we have a lot of times where we have this code that is really specifically written, and the next time you try to do something with it, it's not as flexible. So we always want to make sure things will be flexible. So yeah, so the first two parts of it are or at least the first part of it is very small. That's just adding the logs. That's an easy enough thing to do. The second part of it is the interface for modifying funds. This is because we're adding not just that logging to it, but adding reasons. And we don't actually, like, funds as they stand right now, they don't have kind of any of this information stored in them. They are just a number. Koha, like when you order something, we don't actually subtract that from the fund anywhere. We always do that on the fly. So all of your totals are always calculated at the moment. That way, when things change, we can recalculate them and we're not kind of locking these numbers in, which has its benefits and has its downsides. Some of that slowness and the needing to recalculate everything. So it looks like, yeah, the bulk of it is the new interface for modifying the funds and the recording of that seem to be the biggest part.
Yep. Okay. We did get one question in wondering about blanket PO integration. So
I understand all of those words, but
okay.
I don't understand them together.
Right. Okay. That's what I was going to ask is, does that make sense? All right. So Laura, do you want to explain what you mean by blanket PO?
Yeah, what we have is we have blanket POs in our budget whereby we say we're going to spend $2,000 for ebook content, and I put it into my system, and then as invoices or charges are expended, I want to like track what is happening so that people know how much is left with the funds. And there's sort of a workaround that everyone sort of talked about, but it's not explicitly discussed. And people use blankets a lot, at least we do, with our major vendors, so that we don't have to create a different PO each and every time that we get a new shipment of books. Does that make sense?
You're
you-
muted, Nick.
Let me see if I understood what you said.
Okay.
Essentially, you're kind of placing a $2,000 placeholder order. You're saying ahead of time, we're going to spend $2,000 on this vendor, and then as time goes by, you'll actually spend that out into the individual purchases that are going to be made. Correct?
True. Our previous systems, like the 2 or 3 systems we've had before, all had something built in specifically for blanket POs. So we're relatively new in Koha,
Yeah.
like the last 2 years. So having an ability to do that so that we can track how much, I mean, we can log into our other systems, but this is just a quicker way if it's built in. We've sort of like worked around it, but there would be something more implicit that would be nice to have it included.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I'm trying to on the fly think about how we can do that within Koha. Like my first instinct is to say that that would be something like almost a child fund is what I would create, just to like take your base amount for the fund, take that amount, put it in a child fund, and then just order out from it as usual. But I don't think that will still mark it as encumbered. So this is not something that I'm aware of. Now, I will admit that I was never an acquisitions librarian. So a lot of this stuff you do have to explain and we have to understand, but I don't know that anyone is working on that, and it's not something that has been brought up to me before. It does sound like something that it would be possible to do. We have in the past talked about having child orders, but I think that still is not sort of the same thing. So yeah, I don't know, but that sounds interesting.
Thank you.
But I think there are workarounds that you could do that are not probably what you want. But there would be ways to kind of do that. You could do something with invoice adjustments, at least, invoice that 2,000 and then just record an invoice adjustment for each order that comes in. Although the totaling might still get weird there, but I think you could at least have it tracked that way and then use a report to give you those correct totals of what is left out of that 2,000. Maybe not natively in Koha, but it would give you the ability to add an individual line for each order and then use a report to get your numbers right.
Okay.
Close multiple invoice. Somebody asks, how is the development going for being able to close multiple invoices at the same time? I don't know because I am not working on that one and I'm not sure who is. Bulk close invoices. So that is 22773. That is signed off in the community and just needs to get QA'd. And I will have to look at Jonathan's comments. It looks like the QA person asked some questions there and they have not been followed up by the developer. So thank you. I will poke that one at the developer and see.
Do you know anyone, is there a bug out there for the blanket PO function? Is that something that we have? Just to get it out into the community and get a discussion going?
I know we talked about it here a couple different times.
Right.
I don't know if it ever went any further than that.
Okay, I think maybe a good place the next step that we need to do is maybe open a bug, just and describe, you know, exactly the function that we want. That way, you know, we can, like we did with this last one, you know, get firmed up how we want it to function as far as librarians doing the work. And then we can see if there's libraries that are willing to support the development of it and see what we can get going that way, because I think that blanket PO function is something that a lot of people have asked about and are interested in. Is that like the best way to go, Nick, if we wanted to start moving forward with this?
Yeah, put it out there in the community. What you can also do is always either file an RFC on the Koha Wiki. People tend not to do that quite as much as they used to. And I guess now most people would probably send out something to the mailing list. So I would say file the bug, get your basic kind of thoughts right on what you want and what you want to see, and then pose it to the broader community to get some input from other librarians, other places, just to see what other people might be looking for. See, the problem is that this is my developer brain. I'm just like, I start playing with this. I'm like, oh, maybe you could just have a basket that is like pre-encumbered. And so you say this basket encumbers 2,000, and then you just add your items and it will tell you when that basket's out of money. But you guys should figure out what you want before you let us go play and figure out how to do it.
Okay. All right.
Well said.
Yes. Okay. Are there other burning questions? I know, well, I should wait for people to respond to that before I say anything. One burning question that I have is we do to EDI, and the system that we were on before had the ability to process canceled orders through EDI, which Koha doesn't have the ability to do. Again, that's something I'm curious, you know, for people that do EDI, if they're interested in that. I'm curious, Nick, if you think that's a big ask, or, you know, since we've got the function in there for the orders and talking to the vendor already, is it just a matter of figuring out how to identify a canceled order?
I would say for that question, you're going to need to invite Kyle to this meeting.
Okay.
While I have worked a lot of the acquisitions in Koha code, all of the EDI stuff is Kyle's project. So he would be the one who would know, but I have not heard it come up before, which does not mean that it hasn't come up before.
Okay.
Because he deals with EDI.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think Nick brings up a good idea. It'd be nice to get the developers who are working on acquisitions to stop by this meeting occasionally and check in with them. We can give them the real-time feedback and maybe get some questions answered. So we can chat with Kyle and maybe get a hold of Martin or Jonathan for some months out in the future, and see if we can make this a regular thing.
Yeah, I think that would be great if we can keep communicating with the developers so that we can stay mostly on the same page, closer anyway. Were there any other questions that people had about acquisitions that you're curious about, you know, the process of how bugs work, or how, you know, the development process goes?
Nick, I think you touched on it, but what can librarians do who are using Koha to help see the changes that they want to make? What are some of the things you say we should be doing?
if there is a bug out there that is, you know, it's new and it's waiting, or it's in the in discussion phase, just going and contributing and explaining, you know, how you need it or why you need it is always a helpful thing. If anything is in the need sign off stage, and you want to sign off on it, you can either do it yourself via the sandboxes. We are also always happy to help either demo those bugs or do something to, you know, to get your sign off and help move it along. We really love to see librarians involved. And as I always say, your opinions carry a lot more weight than my opinions, especially in the QA stage. If something has failed QA and there are questions about why this is written the way it was, why the workflow is the way it is, or what the correct workflow is, that's where we always need people to chime in. A lot of times too, as I said, we don't necessarily know. I do my best to think about libraries broadly when working on these developments, but I don't necessarily know how two different libraries will be approaching kind of the same process. Workflows tend to be very different between public and academic, and then US versus worldwide libraries. So it's always good just to get that kind of opinion and perspective so that we know if something has gotten too specific or just if we're going in the right direction with anything. And those are the big places. If you want to get real involved, you know, if you're someone technical like George and you want to, or Jason even, and you want to join the QA team and be out there signing off on bugs, that's always really appreciated. And we're glad to help you get what you need to do things like that out there. Well, I mean, I'm going to call you out by names, guys. Come on, I can see you there.
I'm
But
not
yeah.
all that technical.
But just in that, you know, anything that you see that you do have questions about, don't hesitate to ask us. We are available in Slack, and if you're not part of the Bywater partners, we are available in IRC. You can find us and ask us questions about anything. We're always happy to talk and help. We'd rather have attention on our bugs that, you know, says that we need more work than not have any attention at all.
Okay. I think it's really helpful to have you here, Nick, to kind of share with us what the back end is like, what you guys do, what you are looking for, what kind of input we can give. I think that really helps us, you know, I think what we have been trying to do with the 13325 is kind of what you've described. It was in discussion, so we kind of got together and worked out what we wanted, you know, different libraries giving their input and stuff. So now we've got something concrete that developers can look at and say, hey, this is what we need to do. This is what it's going to cost, you know, if we want to push it through. So I think that's really helpful. And I did, yeah, like I mentioned in the agenda, which some people weren't able to get access to. So I can, in the agenda, I listed all the acquisition bugs that need sign off. I'll figure out how to get access to everybody there. And like you said, if people need help signing off, sometimes the acquisitions bugs can get a little complicated because you need, you know, to have all these baskets set up, which the sandboxes don't have anything set up in them. So you kind of got to do a lot of background work first to get it set up, but it's nothing that you don't do on a daily basis to use these kinds of things. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 different bugs that are ready for sign off. And yeah, we can help each other out with this, and definitely, you know, contact the developers. I've signed off on a few now. It was, hey, you know, got my feet wet, and I think I've signed off on 2 now. It's very exciting. But the sandboxes are pretty straightforward to use, and there is the YouTube, you know, there's a video that shows you just exactly how to walk through the whole process. It's very helpful. When I came across a field I was uncertain what to put in there, I went to the video and, you know, they told me exactly what kind of information and why. So definitely something, you know, if you're at home working from home, this is a wonderful thing to be, you know, try and really help the whole Koha community out. So is there
the sharing settings were kind of funky on that document, so I just made a copy and
Set it
reshared
up.
it. So
okay.
that link's in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I think I kind of screwed up the sharing settings.
No, it's not you. It's the way that we're set up.
Oh.
Because it defaults to koha-US only access, and then you have to go in and click through to share it to everyone.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So hopefully people can see that now. Okay. Well, if nobody has any other questions for Nick, we'll be respectful of your time, and you can go back to developing more acquisition stuff. And
Thanks for having me here. And
yes.
when you want to join the QA team, Rhonda, let me know.
Oh, okay.
Once you keep signing those bugs off, we'll get you there.
Okay. All right. No problem.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Okay. So as I alluded to, I did get a response back from the Bywater team as to the development that we put out there. And we have, let me see if I can find it back now. We have, they came back and said that they suggested that this development be done in 3 parts. And yeah, this is part 1 would be the log modifications to the funds. So that would be add an option to include fund changes into the action logs, would come in at a cost of $1,250. Not bad. Part 2 is build the functionality and interface to modify funds. As your document indicates, a new area to modify amounts from and to active funds with a reason for change. That's where the rubber hit the road. $7,500 for that. And then part 3 is see the history of the fund, which is create a history table on the page and populate with the information log. So that's that little table that we put in so that you could see what had happened in the past, what the changes were. And that was a cost of $1,250. So if you're doing the math, that's a total cost of $10,000 for that update, which is a little bit more than I thought it would be. But my first thought is to make part 1 or phase 1, submit that to the development committee and see if we can get that part of it done, the $1,250, see if we can get that done. So thoughts on that? Does that seem reasonable to do? You just submit to get the part 1, and then we'll have to look at the 7,500 section, which is really the meat of what's going on. I don't know if you can go back to your libraries and see if you can put in, you know, even $100 or something like that toward that cost. We can pool our resources and see if we can get that, because this will be something I think that would benefit a lot of libraries down the road. And then the last part of it would be the $1,250. There's a little note in here that says there are two areas that make this development complex. The first is the creation of a new interface to modify the amounts and display the logged data changes. The second is writing the logic in the code to transfer funds. Transfer is in quotes. This requires back-end logic and processing. If you want just to add or subtract amounts, transfers would be a two-step process. Part 2 would decrease to $5,000 instead of the $7,500. So that's something to think about too. Instead of having the ability to transfer from one screen, you'd have to add for one amount and then go to another screen, whichever other fund, and subtract from that. That would reduce the cost by $2,500. So we can kind of, okay. Thanks, Barbara. We can, maybe what I can do is, are you all familiar with the, oh, help me, Margaret, the crowdsourcing page?
Yep, the Bywater crowdsourcing page where you can pledge a certain amount, whatever amount you want, to developments. I'll get that link for you.
Okay. What we can do is put it out there, and then each of the libraries can put in there how much they're willing to, yeah, okay.
This one's not on the crowdsourcing page yet, so we can get that up.
Okay.
Or it's individual parts. I don't know that we've got, I need to check that ticket and see if we've got individual bug numbers for it yet. Kind of the scope of it, the bug number, sorts of things. But that's just the bookkeeping side. So we can get that set up so people can contribute to it.
So
I'm keeping my mouth shut because I work for Bywater and I shouldn't have any opinions on this. But just getting the logging in there is probably going to be a great step forward. And I can only imagine that once more work is done on the APIs, some of these things where it's instead of grab everything, calculate everything, show it on the page, that might get a little bit easier. So incremental steps. Don't have to get everything developed in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and I agree. The just getting the log modification stuff in there, the action logs, that'd be a huge step right there. So that we could.
I will say it's really not cool that acquisitions seems to be the only major module that does not have logs. Like,
yes.
Really?
So we need to get in there too. We need to make sure we get our logs as well. Okay, and that's probably maybe the best way to chip away at this is to create 3 bugs for each, part 1, part 2, part 3, and then we can put the funding, we can see what happens with the development committee, and then just put it out there for funding to see what we can do with that. Okay. How are we doing on time? Okay. Then the other thing that, okay. So acquisition bugs that need sign off. In the agenda, I listed 9 of them. Feel free to look over this and see if there's one that you think you can knock out. Especially, if you're at home and have some time, this might be a great skill to learn while you're there. I also have a link in there on how the YouTube video that shows you how to sign off on the bugs. So how many people out there have signed off on bugs in the past? Jason? I know Barbara has, because I sat next to her when she did it. Okay, there we go. 3. Yep. And Laurie has done 1. Good. Okay. That really helps move the bugs along in the process. So if anybody else wants help, you know, anybody that has, you know, Jason's done it, I've done it, Barbara's done it. If you want help in learning how to do something like that, that would be, we'd be happy. Oh yeah, George, she's done a bunch. That's true.
I second Laura's suggestion. We could dedicate a meeting to knocking out some acquisition bug sign-offs.
Yeah.
Maybe after we get Kyle here for EDI.
Yeah, that's right.
And then once
Yeah.
we get that done, we'll invite Martin along and say, we signed off on all these bugs. Come here and talk to us.
Yeah. Now what? Make it real. Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think that's a great idea, Laura, because I guess getting my feet wet was at the conference, the koha-US conference, and you know, just watching other people do it and stuff, that will help make it more comfortable for me. So that's great, and that would be a really good agenda item. And I do want, while I'm thinking about this, I do want to put in a plug for Kohathon, which is Thursday of this week. And Jason gets pale when he said, you know, lots of work going into that. Encouraging you to check out the agenda that's on the koha-US webpage. And just, there's going to be a keynote speaker, guest speaker, and I forget, I want to say it's, I don't remember what, it's earlier in the process around.
It's
10.
George now.
It's George.
Yeah.
Oh, George.
I agreed to fill in any people that couldn't present, and then guess who couldn't present?
The keynote.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't even know it was the keynote until like a week after I agreed to do it. So
what is your topic? Get us all excited about it.
I don't know. I'll figure that out Wednesday night.
Oh, okay.
The schedule still says George says something weird, so you just have to tune in.
Okay. So
It's a
now
good time to
you're
have a lunch break. It's about 11 o'clock our time.
okay.
So that's lunchtime. It's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock. Okay. Well, now we're all curious to see what weird thing George is going to come up with to say. So.
None more curious than I.
Yeah. Okay. Mystery. That's right. Jeannie says the best way to get more viewers is with mystery. So there you go. Okay. And then I just want to, we've got a few minutes left here. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask the group related to acquisitions? Anything that you've stumbled across in the last month? How's everybody doing this past month? I mean, things have been very different in the last, well, I guess for us, it's a little over a month. We closed on March 17. It's now April 21. We've been closed to the public, but staff has still been here. Okay, Laura says they're all working from home. You know, we've been, our city manager said, still come in. George says things are peachy. Okay. Sounds good. want to check in. Okay, Barbara says some staff working at the library, some from home, doing deliveries of holds. Okay. And Jeannie, we are all still coming in here too. Okay. All right. All 7 of us. She says. Okay. Los Gatos is closed. Everyone's working from home. Lori is, we're going in alternate days. Okay. It's really interesting to see all the different ways that people have approached this. We started off doing curbside, then when our governor said, stay home, stay, yeah, he tried to say that. Stay home, stay safe. We decided enticing people to come out and get their library materials probably wasn't in the spirit of what was going on. So we stopped that, but now the governor is trying to restart things again. So Friday we will be in retail business can open as what is it called? Curbside kind of thing, you know. So we're going to start curbside back up again on Friday. Okay, so Snow College Library is also alternating days in addition to some work from home. Yes, I am in Texas. Yes. Governor Abbott, who was referenced by the president as knowing what he was doing. That's all I'm going to say. Just going to leave that there. And that's all I need to say. Right. So anyway, if there is any questions on the koha-US website, on the SIG page, the special interest group page, you can, if you talk with other people, there's a join button there now to join a Google group, which is what everybody else, all the other SIGs are doing. So we're going to try this again. That's a place to ask questions in between meetings and discussions. So I think one of the things that we want to discuss, and we'll get a discussion going, is the blanket PO, you know, how we want that to look for different libraries. We can, amongst us, kind of come up with something, then as Nick suggested, you know, create a bug with the information that we have, and then point other people to that bug and see if we can get a discussion going. Because I think that's, again, another function that a lot of libraries will benefit from. So we have.
And just on the Google group part, if you're pretty antithetical to Google or you don't have a Gmail, anything like that, Rhonda and I can always add your email directly. So you can just use it like any of the other listservs where you see something, you respond, and then you can send it to, I think it's acquisitionssig@koha-us.org. Correct me if I'm wrong. We'll add that. And of course, this meeting's been recorded. So you can check out the koha-US YouTube channel for this recording once it's published, previous recordings, and any other special interest groups. So share it with any of your colleagues that weren't able to attend today.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Yes, is Coathon all online? Yes, it is. Everything is online. There's, Jason, maybe you want to say a little bit more about that?
So we're streaming it all live to YouTube, and we're breaking it up into 3 chunks. So there'll be 3 different YouTube links you'll click throughout the day. And we'll have more information about that coming out soon, I hope, since it's Thursday. But yeah, watch for that. And of course, since it's being streamed live, we'll have the VODs, the videos, recordings of it as well. So if you missed something, you can always go back and watch it later.
I'm trying to pull it up. There's just a page on koha-US where we'll put all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got this page that I linked earlier, which has a schedule on it. We will get those links added to the YouTube. Also, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get notified when we go live and when the link changes. I added a period there somehow there. That'll get you to our YouTube page and you can subscribe. Also, if you visit our YouTube page that day, you should be able to find us when we're live. There should be just a video on our channel that you can click. So lots of ways to get there.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see you all at Koha-thon in 2 days. And stay safe, everyone. And how do I end the recording? Oh, here we go. Stop recording. Okay. All right. See y'all. And have a good week or month till we see you next. And yeah, like I said, stay safe.